everyone. My name is Nicki Catchpole. I'm a senior analyst at TBRI, Technology Business Research Institute. And I am very pleased to be joined by Dave Smith, president and founder of Analysts, who I had the pleasure of meeting a couple of months ago when we met at an analyst event down in Austin. And as we were all held captive in our respective homes, doing the best we can, Dave and I thought it would be a cool idea for us to join forces and talk about the impact of remote work, the crisis in general, and how we are all coping. So Dave, I'll hand it over to you for a quick intro.
Thanks, Nikki. Yes, it's great to be here. I guess this is the analyst quarantine edition, right? But yes,
Yeah.
So as Nikki said, I am Dave Smith, founder of Analysis, formerly with Gartner. So I've been in the analyst space for some time, and actually, and as you have, Nikki, been sort of working from home for a while, being in this business.
Yes, I have. I'm actually not from a traditional analyst background. I worked in alliances and strategy for a number of years, and have been with TBR for about 6 months. And having been a strategist, I was either on the road or working from home. So this is the new normal is kind of normal for me, but kind of adapting still has certainly taken its toll and presented challenges, not only for ourselves personally, I think, but Dave, I was inspired recently by a post that you had done with for Zoho, a company that we both mutually cover, where you kind of the human aspect of what it means, and which was a refreshing spin to put on it, because we're all human and we tend to focus, I think, just on the technological and business impacts.
Yeah.
And it's important really to weave both of those in. So that's kind of where I got the idea for us both to collaborate.
Absolutely. Awesome.
So to that end, I mean, David said, mostly I focus on the business strategy implications, and I think you're more focused on the human side, as in how the impact of CRM systems on end users in general. And of course, this has now been thrust into the spotlight with the remote workforce. And just in general, what have been the top trends in the collaboration space that you've witnessed over the past year, and how has that changed just even within the last few weeks, especially for yourself, maybe since you're kind of in the epicenter, at least in the US, living in San Francisco?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been covering sort of this collaboration space, for a while, and with sort of these team messaging apps, like the Slacks, the Zoho Connect, the Microsoft Teams, the WebEx Teams, so forth. It's sort of been this emerging market. I've been referring to it as conversational workspaces, because you're sort of conversing in a virtual workspace, and so it's sort of been the emergence of it has been driven by the need for better team collaboration, improved productivity, integration into key business applications and processes like CRM, marketing, HR, and what have you. And basically what we're seeing is that users want their communications and collaboration apps to be in the flow of how they work, or how they do work on a daily basis. And so this sort of growing space, this conversational workspaces market is sort of being characterized by products that kind of have the following features. It's messaging involved, when you think of Slack, persistent chat, content sharing. And what we're seeing that's emerging now in some of these solutions is the component of it that integrates or natively has video and voice communication. So calling, conferencing, and what have you. And so forth. So we're seeing now that aspect of the whole sort of collaboration space, the real-time stuff, the video conferencing, the web conferencing, that's sort of emerging in the past, month or two, since we've now been on this this pandemic rise. So we're seeing the real-time piece being even more so important now and emerging.
No, that's great. And of course, I have to ask the kind of the downside of the equation. I mean, everyone likes to promote collaboration, and everyone realizes, especially now more than ever, how important this is. But in your opinion, to what extent was the global workforce prepared, or vendors prepared to serve a global workforce? I suppose the better way to ask that question, like, is this unforeseen pandemic putting strains on vendors' ability to provide all of those great benefits that you just described?
That is funny, and I'd love to get your opinion on this too after I sort of say my piece. And so I think we are talking about it before. It's funny, sort of coming from, my background with analyst firm and, yours with consulting and so forth. We've sort of, been accustomed to, in some ways, working from home or working remotely when we need to. And sometimes, solely in that case. So even here now in the Bay Area, while there has been such a huge emphasis, placed on open office, design spaces and making the physical office space more conducive to collaborative work and all these psychoacoustic things and so forth, there has still been an appetite for remote work. Across the board, though, a lot of companies just have really just still been on the fence about remote work and how much of it to allow. And so I think the current pandemic and now being forced to do it will sort of provide necessary data points that will show that, yes, it actually can be done and done effectively. But to really answer the question, companies weren't prepared at all to be completely virtual, but as the saying goes, this will learn them. I think that, no one was prepared to go full remote for everybody, right? And so this is going to create some teaching moments, some data points that will probably give companies who were actually on the fence about remote work, they're going to have some data points say, hey, you know what, this actually can work. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, Dave, absolutely. I have a lot of thoughts about this actually, and there are a lot of different angles that can be taken. For what this means for the future is an interesting point that we're all talking about surviving day to day, and keeping healthy is, of course, the most paramount concern. But what happens when it's never all going to be done? We're going to see the ripple effects for potentially a lifetime, and when you start to think long term. When I think both and short, long term, how this resonates with me and with the vendors that I cover, particularly in the cloud and infrastructure space, is the whole idea of automation. We've essentially been forced to rip out a vast majority of people who work on, in offices or in factories or across all verticals, and that's created this dearth of manpower. And how is that replaced? Automation is a topic that any company, which is virtually every company, has to grapple with. What to automate, when to automate it, what are the positives of automating certain manual tasks and saving time and money, and then what are the downsides? What tasks and what jobs do require human beings? And before we had that choice, now in many cases we don't. In the short term, automation has, just a couple of examples I've come across are truly inspiring. The automation, for instance, of delivering drugs to very sick patients, or filling in the gaps just where it doesn't make sense from a health perspective or from a bandwidth perspective to just keep life going, especially when it comes to essentials like food and medicine. Any downturn, if we're thinking more longer term, is of course going to bring a new bout of structural change in the labor market and demand for skills. So some people have already started to worry, well, am I going to become obsolete? Is a robot going to do my job? And other people on the flip side of that say, well, yes, if a robot does this part of your job, you're now free to do all the other aspects of your job that require human emotional intelligence and require some form of task that just simply cannot be replaced, or at least at this point, by robots. I'm not going to sit down with a psychiatrist for $200 an hour and a robot.
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're just scratching the surface now of what this means, both business-wise and as well as personally. So none of us have a crystal ball.
It's funny too. And as you were talking, I was wondering too, that you mentioned in your response to, a bandwidth. What about, love to get your thoughts on some of the network bandwidth issues, that this whole pandemic now is now bringing upon us, that we now have to bear with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's anyone who is working from home has probably seen that their connectivity rates have gone down. You've had a street that maybe had 3 people working remotely on it to 30 people. And overnight, networks just did not have, by and large, the contingency plans to handle this scale overnight, essentially. So when I think about how we're dealing with it, it actually is quite impressive with how some firms and some companies have been able to enact contingency plans that were maybe meant for kind of local crises and apply them across the board. But then you also have to start to think about where do the technologies that we were kind of planning on in the next 1 to 2 years, such as the advent of 5G technology. Companies are going to be forced to adopt things sooner and faster than ever before. And not because it's a choice anymore, but because they simply have to.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's the tough part, that we're all dealing with, especially in real time right now. So you're right. Networks are getting hit, with everyone doing video calls, especially, right. From enterprises to our local youth sports teams, doing virtual workouts over Zoom. Right. And so it's coming from all angles. But I think some of the bigger problems too, as you alluded to, will be sort of with even the local ISPs. Have to deal with the sort of the rise in traffic with everyone working from home right now. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and to that end, with the, you had mentioned some vendors before and some technologies that have really been highlighted as taking the reins and enabling us to exist day to day. Are there any other vendors that have responded kind of in a, I want to say, altruistic manner, I suppose, by not necessarily kind of capitalizing on all of our pain and offering these services that maybe enterprises or individuals can't afford, but actually helping people cope by extending out, certain services or aspects of their business model to help people at least exist in the short term?
Yeah, absolutely. That's sort of been the thing that I've been delighted most to see. I mean, just the outpouring from especially the tech vendor community. So I think the immediate need has been sort of virtual meetings, as the entire workforce of a lot of companies are now home, right? And also kids are out of school. And so schools need virtual meetings, so they need to have some sort of virtual classroom setups as well, too, as well as enterprise needing virtual group meetings. So the need for group, web, and video meetings skyrocketed, and that usage to skyrocket just now. But a part of why the usage is skyrocketed is that we're seeing a lot of companies offering their services, for free or extended free trials. You have Zoom, offering their services for extended free video conferencing. They've sort of, I think, gone beyond their 40-minute limit to extend that for groups of more. They've extended the capacity as well too. Similar, you have Google offering the free access to their Hangouts Meet. They're also offering extra services for education, for their Google Classroom offering as well too. You have Microsoft offering extended free trial of Microsoft Teams. Cisco is offering free WebEx conferencing services, and some people like Blue Jeans as well as doing that with their video conferencing services, Log Me In, and a lot of others. Ring Central, I guess, they're doing a sort of extended free trial of their Ring Central Office platform services for 3 months. And one company that we both know, Zoho, guys, they're offering free emergency services for small businesses who are kind of being hit hard right now. And so they're sharing their Zoho remotely platform of applications at no cost during this time. Slack is doing free upgrades right now. And so we're seeing all these vendors, again, like I mentioned, reporting increase in the usage in their services. But the fact that they're sort of, putting right now, I think, people over profits and people over revenue is sort of heartening to see. Not sure what you're seeing on your end dealing with the vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the one silver lining to a very dark cloud, is that being able to see in real time, day to day, just the extent to which the world has come together, and that people aren't necessarily capitalizing on it left and right where they can, but actually truly working together to get through this. And what I would ask for anyone listening who may or may not be vendors we cover, or just individuals themselves, would be to contact yourself or I with, I can put up a screenshot with our contact information with any such stories. I think talking about technology is important in one thing, as well as business strategy and process, and talking about people is one thing, but we're bring all of those together and have some real life stories and examples is what really hits it home. And it's kind of like a more humane version of what I like to do with use cases when talking about technology. So, I would urge anyone who is listening, if you could reach out to Dave or I and talk about your own personal use case, I think that would be awesome, and maybe something we could feature if we turn this into a little series while we're all getting through this.
Absolutely, the quarantine series, right? But no, you're
Yes.
right. Having those human
We're gonna
stories would
have
be
to come
really
up with a
great.
better name than that.
Absolutely.
Oh, great. Well, thanks, Dave, for agreeing to join me on this. And I really appreciate your input. And also feel free to bring in anyone else from the analyst community. And I think that all of our collective opinions and the way that we're viewing things can really lend some valuable insight into what others are doing.
That's absolutely true. And thanks again for having me, Nikki. It's been great and fun, actually. This has actually been a great outlet, being sort of quarantined and sheltered in place here in the Bay Area in our home offices and our homes. It's sort of good to have a human conversation and talk to people. So this is for the human connection. This podcast is great.
Awesome. Take care.
You too, Nikki. Bye-bye.